Who-Dats. Welcome to the podcast you've been waiting for. Great perspective and exclusive interviews.
It's a hard job for those guys because it's happening fast.
The kind of Saints insight and fun commentary you won't get anywhere else.
We've got plenty of technology to speed things up.
It's time to kick off your Been There, Done That Saints podcast, where we hand it off to our host, Mike Nabors, and Super Bowl winning linebacker, Scott Shanle.
Proud of these guys.
You got the Super Bowl with Drew Brees in 2009. Since then, even though y'all have knocked on the door, you haven't been back. When you look at yourself as a coach, how do you feel about you and where you are and how much evolving may be necessary, particularly with life after Drew Brees coming up?
Yeah, that's going to happen.
Yeah, it is going to happen. That's Sean Payton talking to Stephen A. Smith, Screaming A. Smith of ESPN. We're going to talk a lot about the quarterback situation and so much more. Welcome into another Been There, Done That podcast. I am merely Mike Nabors. Let's bring in the real MVPs, and that would be my partner, Scott Shanle, and producer, Justin Thomas. We're going to talk Mahomes and kind of play the what-if game a little later. We're going to have exclusive sound from Cam Jordan talking about the defense moving forward. But Shanle, you know, Brees and Peyton made the rounds at the Super Bowl, talked to every entity, of course, after they talked to the Been There, Done That podcast, by the way. What were your takeaways? Because to me, Taysom Hill got a lot of love in Miami about potentially being the future quarterback.
Well, I think if you're the Saints, I think we've all kind of come to the fact or the realization that Teddy Bridgewater is going to be hard to hold on to. And with that being the case, I think it's in your best interest as a franchise to start talking up Taysom Hill. Whether or not those were your plans all along, I still don't believe that was their plans. That's why they traded for Teddy Bridgewater. But nobody foresaw Drew Brees continue to play at the level he's been playing. So you obviously continue to give the reins to Drew until he says he's done. But if Taysom's the only other quarterback in the building, you have to have that confidence in him to come into a game because they needed Teddy to do that last year.
Yeah, check out last week's podcast if you hadn't had a chance to listen, Saints fans. We talked to Drew Brees, the Pro Bowl, and was really passionate about a potential career in TV. I heard a lot of interviews from Brees in Miami, Shanle, and what really stood out for me is I think it was Chris Sims and Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, asked him about, you know, the schedule next year. And he was like, yeah, and he kind of knew. He's like, yeah, we're going here. And they go, whoa, you mean, does that mean you're coming back? And then he kind of backtracked. That was the only interview I thought where Brees maybe showed his cards a little bit. I think he's coming back for one more year. Has your opinion changed since our last podcast?
No, I think, a month ago when the season ended, I would have said 99.9% certain that he was going to come back and play, no doubt in my mind. And then the comments he gave to you really made me think, well, maybe this is like an 80-20 situation where he's really weighing the other options out there. But I just think Drew's competitive fire, the way he played last year, I don't think Drew could go out into his career because I think there would be what ifs. What if I would have came back and played with this nucleus? This roster's still going to be mainly intact. So I think because of that, that's going to be the main reason why he comes back and does it another year.
Justin, we're not ignoring you. I want to bring you in at the perfect spot. We have a poll every week, and please check us out on Twitter. Where are we at on Twitter, Justin?
At Done That Podcast.
I just like hearing you say that every week.
I know. If
you go to our Twitter handle, you will see our weekly poll. And last week's poll, we talked about Drew Brees and where will he be a year from now, I guess this fall coming up, and what were the results?
Yeah, we had three options. Where's Drew Brees going to be this fall? QB for the Saints, TV analyst, or flag football coach. And not surprising, with 78.9%, most people pick QB for the Saints. But I do find it funny that I guess Saints fans felt like if Drew Brees isn't going to play, he doesn't deserve to be on TV because that came in last. Second was flag football coach at 15.8%.
Yeah, I think if the TV offer is there, that I would not be surprised if he took a TV job. But I also think, Shanle, a big part of Brees, and he kind of said this in a lot of interviews in Miami, he knows the core is still around for at least one more year. All these young guys, all these not so young guys anymore. I mean, that, of course, the draft class from 3 years ago is developing now. But I think he realizes the window is closing, but it's still there for at least one more year.
Yeah, this window really started in 2017 when the Saints drafted really well, and they've been drafting really well ever since. But the reason this window is about to close next year, and you're going to have to kind of restart up a little bit, is Drew's probably got one more year left in him based on his age and skill set. But more so, you have guys like Lattimore and Kamara and Ryan Ramczyk. All these guys are going to demand top dollar at their position because they're one of the best players at their position. Whether or not you can pay all those three guys, I don't know. But the more you start paying guys, it really cuts down on your salary cap. You're going to have a new quarterback at some point that will help you because they're not going to be making Drew Brees type money in their first couple of years. So this window with this group right here, and I've said 2017, 18, 19, they were talented enough to win a Super Bowl all 3 years, didn't get it done. I believe this is the last year with this core group, this same identity as a team to win a Super Bowl before they have to restart over a little bit.
All right, Shanle, in our extensive pre-production meeting, we talk about some hot topics we're going to cover, but I didn't bring this up, and I wanted to kind of throw this out there and get your take on this. You mentioned the draft class for 2017. Marshawn Lattimore goes in the first round, and so does Ryan Ramczyk, but Marshawn Lattimore was the first pick. Let's kind of bring in, what happened in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes, 24 years of age, a Super Bowl MVP. He was MVP of the league as well. But what if the Saints would have drafted Patrick Mahomes? I mean, we always talk about, what if Brees would have signed with the Miami Dolphins? Nick Saban probably wouldn't have gone to Alabama, or maybe it would have been much later. And maybe Drew Brees wouldn't have the same career because he wouldn't have been with Sean Payton. Sean Payton certainly wouldn't have had the same career. I'll get the ball rolling first. All right, if the Saints drafted Patrick Mahomes over Marshawn Lattimore, I think Brees might already be retired. How about that? Or he might be playing somewhere else because the secondary wouldn't be as good. Therefore, the defense might not be as good. Therefore, the Saints might not be as good. So they wouldn't have had maybe these playoff finishes because they might not be in the playoffs. And that may have precipitated Mahomes taking over earlier. How do you feel about all that?
Well, the one thing Saints fans, many maybe have heard the story, maybe many haven't, but the Saints were as close as you can imagine to taking Patrick Mahomes. He was their selection at that point in the draft before Andy Reid traded in front of the Saints to take him. I agree with everything you just said, Mike. The scenario of the way things would have played out, I believe they would have played out exactly like they did in Kansas City. I think Drew would have played the 2017 season with Mahomes backing him up, but I believe because of his talent level, they would have had to move on. And Drew, to me, probably would have went and played somewhere else for a couple of years. I think he would have been in high enough demand. But I still think Patrick Mahomes would have been the starting quarterback the last couple of years for the Saints, much like it would have been the same thing that happened in Kansas City. It would have just happened in New Orleans.
All right, if the Saints fans had a crystal ball back in 2017, and you could tell them, all right, here's the deal. You're going to get Patrick Mahomes, and Brees is going to be gone after a year. He's going to be this just unbelievable player in the NFL. Or he's going to go to Kansas City, and you're going to have to suffer through the Minneapolis Miracle. You're going to have to suffer through the no call, and then another one. I mean, I know what Saints fans would pick, but isn't it interesting if that one pick would have been made, how things would be – history would have been so much different.
Oh, it would have been way different. I know teams, you go back over the course of history, and everybody always talks about what if this team would have drafted this player or had they not drafted this player. But this is reality. This was the Saints selection. A lot of people have said, I've heard it from people in the front office directly, that was their guy. That is who they were going to take in the first round of that draft until Andy Reid knew that the Saints and Coach Payton really liked Mahomes. They did everything in their power to trade ahead of the Saints at that point. And, a lot of people at the time, who's this Patrick Mahomes guy? Why are they taking him so high? But when you have a guy like Andy Reid and Sean Payton who really covet the same guy, I think that speaks volumes about the talent level of the player and everything they saw in him. But it would have happened. If Kansas City didn't like Mahomes as much as the Saints, Patrick Mahomes would be in a Saints uniform.
Well, and who knows where Marshawn Lattimore would be. It's just funny how one pick can change so many lives. And Ryan Pace in Chicago, he's scratching his head on Mahomes as well with Mitchell Trubisky, the second overall pick that draft, and he had Deshaun Watson, who he bypassed as well. Let's go back to the quarterback situation before we get to Cam Jordan talk defense. I talked to him at the Pro Bowl, and he had some insight into the future of the Saints defense coming up. But Jake Lazier, to me, is a guy, I know he's very close to Sean Payton, and he doesn't just throw stuff to stick against the wall. I mean, when he comes out, he's usually dead on, especially with the Saints. For him to say that Sean Payton believes that Taysom Hill can be the future starting quarterback for this team, did that surprise you? I mean, he's pretty dead on with most of his stuff.
Well, it didn't surprise me because you've heard in the past some of the compliments Coach Payton's given to the type of player Taysom Hill is. I mean, when you start talking about Taysom Hill having the same type of ability as Steve Young, that's obviously a Hall of Famer versus a guy who's never started a game in the NFL. But we've seen this Swiss Army role. We've seen him as a football player, and he's a fan favorite throughout the National Football League for a lot of different people. They love watching Taysom Hill. It remains to be seen whether or not he can drop back 40 times a game and throw the ball with the accuracy you need to do it. And the hard thing for him is you never want to be the guy to follow the main guy. You want to be the guy who follows the guy. So
Yeah.
it's in a difficult situation because Taysom Hill, if he takes over for Drew Brees after next year, he is not going to run the offense like Drew. He's not going to throw the ball as well as Drew. His timing, his back shoulder throws, all those things will not be as good. You're going to have to design the offense around him. And so this top five offense, this scoring offense that we've gotten used to seeing under Coach Payton would look dramatically different because of his skill set.
All right, Shanle, I'm going to put you on the spot. If you're the general manager of the New Orleans Saints and Drew Brees retires, what do you do? Do you keep Bridgewater around? Do you even entertain grooming Taysom? I mean, what do you do at this point?
You're talking if he retires like today?
Yeah.
Oh,
Take some money in that football job, replaces Booger McFarland.
If Drew Brees retires right now, does not play this fall, I think the Saints have to sign Teddy Bridgewater. Keep Taysom. Taysom Hill's not going anywhere because he's a restricted free agent. You can work that deal out just by tendering him at a high tender, 2 first-round picks. But Teddy Bridgewater is a commodity. You know what he brings to the table. If the Saints would not re-sign Teddy Bridgewater in that situation, I think that speaks volumes to them not believing in him as a franchise quarterback. But if Drew Brees says, I'm out, you have to re-sign Teddy Bridgewater, I would think.
All right, what if you're general manager of the Saints and Drew Brees plays one more year, which means Teddy Bridgewater somewhere else, Taysom Hill is your backup quarterback, and then Brees retires a year from now? Do you go get somebody else, or is Taysom your guy?
Justin, I feel like Mike's giving me every possible scenario for me to say that Taysom Hill will be the Saints starting quarterback.
He's my guy. I love Taysom.
I love Taysom Hill. He's a great football player. I just don't think he's a franchise quarterback in the NFL. I think if Drew plays this year, Teddy's gone, Taysom's the backup quarterback. I think the Saints will draft someone fairly high in the NFL draft. They may even go out and sign somebody like the Titans did with Tannehill, maybe a Marcus Mariota, some type of veteran presence to see, can this guy take over? I think Taysom Hill's a great quarterback. I just don't think he can do it play after play. I mean, he's already 30 years old, so you're going to get how many more years out of him? At this point, you have to start looking for the next franchise quarterback for the next 15 to 20 years.
Okay, I've enjoyed watching Taysom Hill play so much the last couple of years. If he's not the starting quarterback at any point, it's like I'm in a Rolling Stones concert, and all of a sudden they come out and say, Justin Bieber's going to be here instead of the Rolling Stones. I mean, it's going to be disappointing. I'm expecting this big show, and I'm not getting what I want. And Shanle, pull me back a little bit because maybe I'm just wanting to see all the excitement. And you're obviously much better at X's and O's, infinitely better than I am. I want it to happen, and I see Sean Payton being creative, and I see the pattern of offenses around the NFL, and the dynamics have changed so much in the last even 5 years. I mean, why can't it happen with Taysom Hill? I mean, you said it a little bit, but you don't think with Sean Payton he could make it work, huh?
I think Sean can design an offense around anybody's skill set. I just don't believe in that type of offense. We saw it this year with Lamar Jackson. They won game after game after game. It was tough to defend. Going into next year will be even more talent because defenses will have a chance to look at what Baltimore did. Can he do it again? I just think it's a passing league. At some point, you have to be able to draw back in the pocket and pick apart a defense with your arm. All these plays where you break the contain or you run read option, all those things are fine and dandy, but those are 5 plays out of 75 plays. You have to be able to drop back in the pocket and throw the ball to win championships.
Woo! Man, this is a softball. This is hardball. And Shanle just knocked them all out of the park. I tried my best. There. All right, let's switch to defense. Let's bring in Cam Jordan. And I was doing this interview with Cam, and his kids aren't Breeze Boy's age yet. He was visualize this. I'm interviewing Cam Jordan, and he's actually at one point holding his son by his feet, and his son is just he's like swinging him, like his head's facing the ground. And obviously they've done that before. Didn't get hurt. It's not a bad thing. It was a playful thing, but it was funny. But Cam Jordan could talk about some very serious topics while doing that with his children. Let's start the interview off. I asked Cam Jordan about the state of the team right now after yet another disappointing loss in the playoffs. I know the season didn't end the way you wanted to. What's the feeling now that you're a little bit removed from it?
It still didn't end the way I wanted to. I mean, that feeling's never going to change. When you talk about exactly what we want to do this season and how we overcame so much adversity in terms of losing our starting quarterback, not having, some of our top players game in, game out, and yet we still came up with this type of season. We expect ourselves to go further.
Shanle, how long does it take after you have a tough loss in the offseason? Not that you ever get over it, but I'll take you back to like 2011 against the Niners. I know all these losses are different, but is it mid-March? Is it mid-April? Is it May? Is it June? Is it training camp? I mean, when do you kind of settle in and say, we got to move past this?
I think for most players, for me, it was once you start to get back and get into off-season workouts. Once April comes, I think they start early April now. It used to be mid-March, but once you get back in the building, everybody just kind of hits reset. Last year is done. We're moving forward. How good of a player can I be this year? No one pays you based on what you did last year. It's all about going forward, and that's the pressure part of the business that some people excel under or they crumble under. That it's all about going forward. It's all about moving forward. Nobody cares about what you did in the past. So you have a couple months to lick your wounds and feel sorry for yourself and think about what might have been. Or when you're done playing, I mean, we still think about those games. But I think for a lot of players, once you get back in the building after that break and after that reset, everybody's got their focus on moving forward and having the best season possible that fall.
That's great perspective right there. All right, let's talk about this Saints defense. We've talked a lot about the quarterback position for New Orleans, but the Saints defense is not going to look the same in some ways, especially maybe in the secondary with some free agents back there, and then you have them, kind of all over the place. But I asked Cam Jordan about the future of the Saints defense on a couple fronts, and here's what he had to say. Not having Marcus Davenport, not having Rankins, you guys don't make excuses, but having them back next year, how good can this D-line be once again?
We talk about exactly what we were able to accomplish with the healthy D-line, how scary we look up front. It can only boast well for us in the future. We got David Onyemata, who could possibly be a free agent this year, and that scares me a little bit. But if we come back with full strength, it's untold how well we can do.
This team moving forward, you never know who's going to be back, but it seems like the core is pretty good for this football team. How do you feel about the core of this team moving forward now?
I feel like we have a great nucleus. We talk about Marcus Williams coming into his fourth year next year. That's huge for us. I don't know what happens with Von Bell, but the types of plays that he makes, I mean, you can't make those back. I mean, the crucial forced fumbles, it seems like every time the ball hit the ground, Von was around it. And so that's something you just can't teach. You talk about what our secondary has improved on. We bring in Janoris Jenkins, and, he only had, 3 or 4 games with us. You can only hope that he, turns into rare form this next year and to have 2 corners who can lock down anybody. And that is only going to bode well for the defensive line.
Cam Jordan doing that while babysitting both of his children after a Pro Bowl practice recently. I appreciate his time. He's always great and gives you time on a number of subjects. Let's break this down. Let's begin with Von Bell. I don't see him back as a New Orleans Saints guy. Shanle, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I think the way he played kind of helps facilitate that a little bit. And I don't know if they can afford Von Bell. How do you feel about that?
I think Von will sign a pretty good deal in free agency, and you're right. Chauncey really stepped up and played well as a rookie, kind of in that same role that Von played when they drafted him. So they were prepared for this day when Von would become a free agent, whether they knew he'd play as well as he did or whether they thought they would just let him go in free agency. But there are going to be teams out there that I believe free agency comes around every year. Teams have certain needs, certain types of players you can't get in the draft. I don't think the draft is full of hybrid type safeties this year. So Von Bell will probably be gone based on the contract he gets from another team.
Yeah, Von Bell, kind of an underrated guy in this defense, so just got better and better as a professional. Let's stay in the secondary. Marcus Williams, part of that big 2017 class. Not his best year, though, last year, Shanle.
No, Marcus, I think we all had high expectations for Marcus since his rookie year. He was drafted, and then he came in and started right away as a free safety. There were a lot of talks around him as his leadership ability, wise beyond his years. But I don't think you saw the production out of Marcus the last year, even going into the year before, where maybe those deep safety, playmaking, ball hawk type skills you need at free safety. I've said a lot of times our defense really took off when we had players like when they signed Darren Sharper, he came in and could just roam the middle of the field, read the quarterback's eyes, make plays deep. I think that's what's been missing from Marcus's game. And he is a great leader. He's a great locker room guy. He's a great teammate. But you need to make those plays deep in the middle of the field when the ball's thrown up there for grabs.
Yeah, high praise from Cam Jordan to single Marcus Williams out. Let's talk about the defensive line. David Onyemata, really an underrated guy. I mean, has stepped up a lot with Shelton Rankin's injuries across that defensive line, frankly. And Cam Jordan even said, it scares me, the fact that he may not be back. That could be a cap casualty along with Von Bell, David Onyemata, right?
Yeah, that would be a huge loss. And we saw this Saints defense. When this Saints team was rolling last year, especially when Drew got hurt, this defensive line was playing outstanding, getting a lot of push, rushing for, getting a lot of pressure on the quarterback. They didn't play the same way late in the season. A lot of it was due to injuries, Davenport and Rankins. But David Onyemata, I think, is going to be another player who's going to be in high demand come free agency. He's a big guy who plays the run and the pass equally well. This guy makes plays on the sideline. He runs sideline to sideline as a big guy. So I think he'll be another guy that teams are going to want to go after. Let's face it, teams in free agency want players who have been a part of winning cultures and successful teams. And both those guys have won a lot of games over the past few years.
Before we get to our last segment, which will be a lot of fun, you guys stick around for that. Yeah, I think two guys, that are big for this defense moving forward. One has to stay healthy and one has to behave himself, is Alex Anzalone and Janoris Jenkins. I mean, those could be two big players for this defense next year.
Janoris Jenkins, at the time, you hardly ever get a player of that caliber late in the season to claim off waivers. And the good thing for the Saints is Eli Apple's another one of those guys who's going to hit free agency. If he leaves, maybe he doesn't get a great big deal, so you're able to match it. Now you can keep the depth of your cornerback position. You always need a lot of corners. But Janoris Jenkins was one of those waiver claims where you knew at the time you may be thin at corner next year, so why not take a chance on a great player who's not – he's really not being paid all that much compared to what elite corners are being paid. And Alex Anzalone, I've been high on Alex since he's been a rookie. The big thing for him was just staying healthy. But if you pair him with Demario Davis, that's just two really good cover guys in the nickel linebacker situation. Probably the best tandem in the NFL, if you ask me, as far as being able to cover. So if Alex can stay healthy and Janoris Jenkins steps right into that corner role opposite Marshawn, this defense could be even better than we saw they were this year.
Yeah, I agree. The key, though, is Anzalone staying healthy. Had trouble staying healthy at Florida and has had trouble with the New Orleans Saints. Well, Shanle, you know what? I have one more Taysom question for you. Justin, you know what time it is. More likely time, baby. 3 hypotheticals, and my partners have not seen these questions, and I'm glad that Shanle is far, far away from me because I think if we're in the same room, he'd probably want to tackle me very hard the way I've handled him in this podcast so far. But Justin, you get to go first, and I know you love going first. My first question, Taysom Hill is just so great for the offseason. I mean, here we are, not even in mid-February, and he's just making the NFL offseason so much fun. All right, more likely, okay? If you could have the rest of their careers, all right, more likely, who would you take, Teddy Bridgewater or Taysom Hill?
Like if I could have either of them on the team for the rest of their career?
No, if you could, yeah.
If I could beat them.
If you could be them. You could be them, yeah.
Oh, this is easy.
This is way easy.
Easy?
I'd choose Taysom.
All right.
I think Taysom, he's a jack of all trades, man. He's all over the field. He's obviously having fun. I think Teddy seems to have a great personality, but I would choose Taysom.
Shanley's never thrown
Justin.
I know Shanley wasn't going that way. Yes.
No matter what, I don't think, Mike, you gotta come up with another question. Get me to say Taysom Hill because this is easy. I'm gonna tell you why it's easy.
I know what you're gonna say. Cha-ching, cha-ching,
exactly.
Cha-ching.
Teddy Bridgewater's going to have $100 million coming up here soon. Taysom Hill, I don't think we'll ever see a NFL quarterback salary quite like Teddy's about to experience going through free agency. Oh. Basically because of Taysom's age. Taysom's a lot older than Teddy. Teddy's got a lot of football ahead of him. So, when all the fans die down and all the clamoring for RPOs and watching Taysom Hill run the RPO, when all that's done, you're an old man who has to sit back in your recliner, and I think I'd much rather be Teddy Bridgewater.
I didn't even think about the money. I didn't even think about the money. See, now I would have changed.
Yeah, now you sound like a diva wide receiver or something like that. You know what? Here's my thing, Shanle, my last hope. Who's more likely to play special teams next year, Teddy Bridgewater or Taysom Hill? All right, that's all I want. I wanted one Taysom Hill answer. That's all I want. Okay, all right. Second more likely. I always love Hall of Fame debates. I love them. And I love the whole Hall of Fame speeches. I love everything about the Hall of Fame to me is fantastic. I love the speeches every year, but I love the debates too. This past class, there were two omissions I think that people kind of debated the most. And I don't know if this is going to be tough for you, Justin, but I covered actually both of these guys, so maybe this is just more hits home with me. But who was the bigger omission for the Hall of Fame this year? Who should really be in there? Is it John Lynch or is it Tony Baselli? Former offensive lineman for the Jags or former safety, hard-hitting safety for the Bucks and the Broncos? John Lynch or Tony Baselli?
When did Tony play?
Well, he played in the late '90s, early part of this
Say, all
century.
right.
Yeah.
See, I
If he
remember
hadn't gotten hurt, he'd be a surefire Hall of Famer.
I remember watching John Lynch mainly because he was in the division. And I remember how good he was. I don't remember following the Jags that much. I remember they did really well in the late 90s. But outside of that, I don't remember watching them much. So I just based on the fact that I'm not too familiar with Tony and how he played, I definitely am surprised John Lynch isn't in the Hall of Fame. But yeah, I have to go on that. I mean, just because I don't have too much, experience of watching the other play.
Yeah, it was a tough weekend for John Lynch. Of course, he's the 49ers GM, and they lose the Super Bowl, and he doesn't get the Hall of Fame. And he's been in the top 10 for a couple of years now, didn't make the cut. But Shanle, out of those two guys, who's more deserving to be a Hall of Famer?
I love John Lynch. I think he's a great player. I think he's a great general manager. I think the fact that he's doing what he's doing as a general manager will help him when it comes time to get into the Hall of Fame. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame, but I think it's going to help him. Whereas Tony Baselli's kind of been out of sight, out of mind. But to me, I think it's Tony Baselli. This is a guy who was a cornerstone of a franchise, and I think could have been the tackle on probably almost every NFL team, been an upgrade over what other NFL teams had. He was a tremendous player who probably could have played 15 years and been mentioned with Jonathan Ogden and Orlando Pace and guys like that, but he experienced some injuries. But I think Tony Baselli, a lot of people don't watch the tackle position, but he was an outstanding player.
I think he would have been, right up there with Anthony Munoz as one of the best offensive linemen the game has ever seen. I covered him in Jacksonville, and I saw him dismantle Bruce Smith, and he dismantled Jason Taylor so much in a Monday Night Football game against the Dolphins. He was laughing at him. Like, is that all you got? And both of those guys are in the Hall of Fame. So to me, if you put the tape on, you look at Tony Baselli's body work, and I always look at, too, John Lynch had a full career, and injuries didn't cost him his career. I look at Terrell Davis. I look at Gale Sayers. I think the Hall of Fame did those guys right by saying, you know what, if they would have played longer, they would have put up the numbers we expected them to put up. And I think Tony Baselli falls under the same thing, that if he would have kept going, he not only would have been a Hall of Famer, he would have been one of the best left tackles ever. All right, Shanle, I think I'm going to get back in your good graces with this one, okay? Final, more likely question. And, of course, Justin goes first. The XFL kicks off, finally. Yay, XFL. Nay, XFL. This is like the ultimate tease. We all are football crazy, and we want football year-round. But time and time again, whether it's the old XFL, whether it's the AAFL, whether it's whatever, they're like one and done, two and done. They disappoint us. Is this finally going to be successful? Spring football, Justin Thomas, professionally.
Well, I know the NFL is. I guess it seems like they've bought into it. I know they said that they're excited for it. I know ESPN's ready for it. I think the one thing maybe the XFL has going for it is that obviously it's football, but the last time the XFL was around, they introduced a lot of unique things that wasn't in the NFL. They had a lot of fun with it, and it made it different enough to, I think, generate its own buzz. I think sometimes with some of these branch offs of other teams, like you said, AFL and all that, they're almost too similar, I guess, in a way to regular football. This might be different and unique enough. I know some of the technology that was used in the XFL made its way to now, like with the Skycam, that's in the NFL now. I think it has the potential to stick around. Obviously, it comes down to backing, which the last effort last year for a different league failed because of that. But I think, yeah, there's potential for it to stick around. I'm excited for it, at least.
Man, in a year's time, Shanle, Justin Thomas has turned into quite the broadcaster, man. Breaking the XFL down from all angles right there. I love it. Shanle, I don't know what you're going to say on this one. Sometimes I feel like I have a good vibe of what you're going to say, but how do you feel about the XFL?
I'm excited to watch it. I think there's a couple issues I have with them having staying power. I think there's a lot of people that are excited to watch more football when the football season's over. There's going to be keys to the XFL having staying power. The reason I'm excited to watch it is there's two reasons. First of all, this is near and dear to our hearts as Saints fans. I want to see if the officiating is better. I want to see if the replay officials are better. That is the number one reason why I want to watch another league succeed and be better than the NFL. Secondly, I want to see a quarterback get rocked in his face, get thrown back 10 yards, and not have a flag thrown on the play. That's if I think if the XFL brings back real football, unless wide receivers and quarterbacks get hit, they will gain back some of these football fans who can't stand watching the NFL turn into flag football. I think that's going to be an advantage for the XFL. But secondly, to have staying power after this spring, they have to have stars. You can't have cast-offs from the NFL and guys who weren't good enough to play in the NFL if you want to have staying power. To me, you have to go to colleges and get Trevor Lawrence's. You have to get freshmen, guys who don't want to play 2 more years in college, and give them a bunch of money to come play in the basically a farm league for the NFL. I think that's how you have staying power.
Did you say rocked in the face?
Rocked in the face, right under the chin. just like Aikman and Young and Montana. Those guys got rocked under the chin, got right back up and kept playing football. I think fans really want to see that type of football being played again.
As a reporter, we don't usually like locker room interviews. It's awkward. You got to wait till guys dress. The whole thing is just awkward. I remember interviewing Steve Young back in late in his career, and he had his back turned to us, and he wasn't rocked in the face, man, but he had like scratches all over his back. Like it was, I don't know, it was crazy, man. Like he was just beat up that game. So will you drop a rocked in the face every podcast just at some point? Every podcast?
Rocked in the face. Yeah. Just picture it. I know a lot of football fans, we haven't seen it for a long time because, in college it's targeting. Guys get ejected if you hit somebody too hard. Now in the NFL, it's a penalty or they're going to get a FedEx and a $30,000 fine the next week if they hit the quarterback too hard. But let's as football fans get excited to watch this first week of the XFL and watch a quarterback get hit. Wow. Won't it be great? Yeah. It'll be fun to watch a quarterback get hit again.
It will get and they'll get hit in this league. That's no doubt about it. I say this about the XFL. I think Vince McMahon, say what you want about him. He's a great businessman, great at entertaining people. And they don't even want to use the stats from the previous XFL. It's a clean slate. But I think that really helps them is the TV contract, because the AAFL, or whatever the hell they called it, they had like one primetime weekend and then they were done. They're like all on these other secondary networks. I think the fact that they're going to be on ESPN, Shanle, that's really going to help this league.
Oh, without a doubt. Just having the attention, it's a bigger brand. People know where to go for their football. A lot of people are looking for sports. But a lot of it is going to be, can fans identify, not relate with, but have certain players on their teams that they cheer for? And to me, the XFL, the one thing I should say I'm not excited about, or maybe I'm a little apprehensive about getting excited about, is this double pass. I'm not sure how that's going to work. It's a little gimmicky to me. I am excited about going for 1, 2, or 3, getting rid of the kicker after the touchdowns, leave those guys on the sideline. The 1, 2, or 3, I think, is going to be an interesting part of the game as well.
All right, I just thought of this question. I don't know what you're going to say on this one, too. This is why I ask these questions. But Scott Shanle's career would have been different. Let's just say, you're like 4 years in and you've had a decent career, but, you were cut by the Cowboys maybe. Obviously, that didn't happen. I'm just playing hypothetical here. Would you play in the XFL?
No. I would.
Oh, really?
No, I would not have played in the XFL.
Interesting. Why not?
I just think for me, my dream was to play professional football. A lot of guys I know play XFL or other leagues in hopes of getting back to the NFL. Seldom does that happen. And I think the sport's already tough enough that it's not worth it at some point. At some point, you have to go use your college degree, use your skill set that you were able to get through playing football at college, going to a university. And I just don't think I would have put my body in harm's way to play in the XFL. If it wasn't the NFL, I probably wanted to play football.
Interesting answer. That's why, I never know what we're going to get in this podcast. That's why you should subscribe today, Saints fans, football fans, XFL fans. You get that kind of perspective. Justin Thomas breaking the league down, and Shanle giving you a little personal experience there, or hypothetical personal experience. All right, before we go, I'm patting myself on the back right now. Just visualize that. Prediction time. I did not get the Super Bowl. Justin got it. Shanle got it. After 23 games of predicting this year, I won by 1 game. And you know why? Because I really didn't take any chances at the end. So really, you know what? I shouldn't really brag. I mean, Justin tried to pick the Packers and tried to pick, some dark horses late. But I beat you guys by 1 game. What do I get for that? Do I get anything for that?
No? Give him a that-a-boy.
Yeah, I was going to say that. We can give you some applause.
All right. I just threw the paper in the basket. That's what I did. Well, listen, guys, we're going to have more coming up. We had Cam Jordan this week. We had Drew Brees last week. I have a talk with Jared Cook next week, and then we have Will Lutz coming up as well. So always some great interviews, some great perspective, stuff we didn't expect. I tried to get Taysom Hill stuff out of Shanle, and he's held firm, man. I give you credit, Shanle. That was a good effort on your part.
If I'm the Chicago Bears, I would gladly take Taysom Hill as my quarterback. I was thinking about that. I was thinking, how can Mike get me to say Taysom Hill's a starting quarterback?
Yes!
I would have said, Shanle, can he start for the Bears? I would have said yes. So there, I gave you the question.
We need a Hallelujah chorus handy, Justin. We can just play it. We're going to do Hallelujah chorus next week. We're going to have that pre-production, and we're going to have Rocked in the Face reference from Shanle. Okay, we're going to have all that moving forward now in this podcast. All right, once again, we're going to have a poll, so please weigh in on our Twitter handle, which is what, Justin Thomas?
Done Dad Podcast.
At Done Dad Podcast. Please like us and please subscribe to our platforms. We're on all of them. We're on iTunes, we're on Podbean, we're on Stitcher, we're on Spotify, we're on Google. That was a fun one. I mean, we're not even in mid-February, and we have a lot to talk about. Free agency is right around the corner. The Combine's right around the corner. We'll have the draft. So always something to talk about with the New Orleans Saints. We appreciate your time. For my partner, Justin Thomas and Scott Shanle, I hope we rocked your face, everybody. We'll see you next week.